Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
A fabulous free kick from Leighton Baines. Dawson, oh, what a finish from Glenn Dawson. It's 2-0. It's scored by Tim Cahill in injury time for Everton. Matheson, the 16-year-old, to Wilbraham, the 40-year-old. Stunning from James Rodriguez. And here into Henderson. And Ian Henderson, right on half-time.
Hello and welcome back to the Men in Blue podcast. This is episode 23, part of our end of season review. We've been away for a little while, of course, because we've had holidays, we've had new jobs, we've had just life getting in the way. But we're back, and to look at the season that was the 2021-22 season in English football. We're joined today, of course, by my brother Matt. Matt, currently halfway through, I think, a garlic bread. So perfect time to ask you, how you doing?
Pizza, I'll have you know. Pizza's very nice. I'm doing alright, back from holiday, ready to reflect on an absolute shit show of a season, so let's crack on.
Of course, our resident Rochdale supporter, Greg, how are we doing, mate? How's life? How was your holiday?
Yeah, superb. Yes, we've just come back from Gran Canaria for 10 days, so our batteries are recharged, if you will, and all sorts like that. Ready to talk about the utter depression that is Rochdale AFC.
Well, that's always, good to know that you're ready to go and talk about the perpetual disappointment of Rochdale. We can say that because it's true. And we're joined, of course, by Dec, our newly inducted fourth member of the podcast. How are we doing, Dec? How are we getting on?
Yeah, all good. Glad to be an official podcaster now, no longer just a guest. Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, season that could have been.
Yeah, congratulations, Dec, on becoming the Ringo star of the podcast. The last one to join, but you complete the Fab Four, shall we say. Also, not the best drummer in the pod. But he has got a ukulele, which he's a mean ukulele player, just for anyone who's wanting to know that. But yeah, of course, you've got your residential tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Got your shorts packed?
This is true.
Good to know. Right, so, where shall we begin? Do we want to begin? Not really. I know, let's begin. Let's start from the top. Well, sort of the top. Everton. Not really the top at all, was it? Top division. Matt particularly, but lads in general. Anything we haven't already said about the utter just crap that was Everton Football Club over the last 9 months? Anyone got anything to add on that, to be perfectly honest with you, while we review the pitch invasion that was?
At least we didn't go down. There's that. That's literally the only positive is we didn't go down. Because at one point, well, there was a point, was it Burnley away? Where I genuinely thought that was it. If we're winning 2-0 up, I think, wasn't it, at half time?
Yeah, to have gone 1-0 and 2-1 up with... No, sorry, 1-1 to 2-1 with 2 penalties, which, when do Everton get a 1 penalty, never mind 2? And then, even at half time, it was like, nah, still losing. But go ahead.
And it was just a case of... I thought that was it. I genuinely thought, I don't know where this team gets points from. And somehow, some way, through people tying themselves to goalposts, through to a variety of other situations, we blagged our way out of the relegation zone in what is the weirdest 45 minutes of my entire life, getting the updates from the Crystal Palace game, because there was a part of me that we were sat together whilst that game was happening, and as much as the relief kicked in, at the same time there was this is so sad, this is so ridiculously sad that I'm sat here praying, pardon me, for a home win against Palace, so we haven't got to go to Arsenal and get something, which thank God, because that was that would have been horrendous on the last day. It was just a season of thank God it's over, and we're not going to touch too much on pre-season, that's for next month's pod, but even the reports coming out of already show that it's going to be an interesting summer in many, many ways, and I don't even know if I'm looking forward to next season. I know you kind of say new season, clean slate, but God, it was a tough year. It's been ever so fun in the grand scheme of things. I appreciate, the derbies of this world, etc. But yeah, not an enjoyable 9 months, whatever it was. Put it that way.
Also, yeah, Everton, the epitome of new year, new me, and it's the same old shit, isn't it? So we'll see. But yeah, it was apart from what Richarlison lobbing a flare, a dog being paraded around the outside of Goodison Park, who I maintain the dog should have got Player of the Season, literally. And of course, special shout out to the turn up of Alex Iwobi, who actually realised he wore a blue shirt for the first time in about 3 years. Not a lot else to report. I mean, I'm happy with Frank Lampard. I think he's had a lot of critics, especially with his Chelsea job, and obviously since he joined Everton. I'm happy for him. He's changed my perception of him from being Frank the Tory to, well, Frank the Tory, but kind of gets Everton. So fair enough. But yeah, I'll obviously, anyone else want to invite any thoughts on that or anything else to do with the utter horrible Merseyside Blue this year?
I was a bit worried watching the Brentford game. When he played Brentford, I was like, oh my word, like, it's getting quite edgy, that game. I remember watching it. I just couldn't see how they were going to stay up. Like, a bit, I'm obviously...
Quite edgy. We're down to 9 men, Greg. Well, one down to 10 men inside 15 minutes.
I've only watched a few Everton games from, like, start to 90 minutes, what have you. And, like, the Spurs game were one, and that were the other, and a few others. I was thinking, good Lord, I don't know how you guys stay sane. It went for that Palace win. It could have been, oh man. And you don't want it to go down to the last game. You really don't. I've had that at Rochdale and it's awful. We've had it when Joey Thompson had to score. Well, when he scored against Charlton at home, it was bloody nerve-wracking. So you just don't want it to go to the last game, really.
Well, yeah, it is a bloody good job. We didn't want it to go to the last game because we got humped 5-1 at Arsenal. So, yeah, good job, really, lads. Thanks for that.
They'd all been on the piss for the last 3 days. They also over-celebrated the Palace game, and that was it. They were on the lash for at least 3 days.
Didn't agree with the end-of-game celebrations, whatsoever, from the players particularly. A little shout to the Brentford game, though. Fun fact, I was going to my girlfriend's parents for tea that night on a Sunday. Left the house, and it was 2-1 to us. By the time I got into the car, we were 3-2 down. Genuinely, that's how bad that was. So it literally took about 2 minutes to actually... Not saying it takes 2 minutes to get from the front door to my car. I'm not like Potter or anything, but it was that bad.
I can top weirdness of those situations. So the Palace game, my girlfriend was in London for the day with work. I said I'd pick her up outside the cobbles by the museum, 10 o'clock-ish when she got back from London. Sorry, I was greeted by a lot of joyous Evertonians, and outside the Empire Theatre that night, or on the amphitheatre, was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So I was met by football fans onto my left and men in stockings and drag and everything else on the right. It was an amazing, amazing sight that I will never forget, due to Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
How do you know that wasn't Dominic Calvert-Lewin, to be fair? Given his GQ magazine front covers. I'm all for it. I've been to see a few drag shows, it's great, but we don't know that wasn't Everton fan still, Matt. Don't judge a book by its cover here.
I'm not saying it either way, but it made for a compelling viewing from my car window for the 10 minutes I was sat there waiting for it. But there you go. That's life.
It's a lot to take in, isn't it? All of that when the goal goes in as well.
It was a lot to take in. I imagine there might have been a few naked men.
I want Deck's opinion on Everton. What do you reckon, Deck?
I want Deck's being on suspenders, to be honest with you.
I think I'm taken aback a little bit there by Matt's story. No, in terms of Everton, I think. I mean, you all know I'm not a big kind of follower of the Premiership football, but just from kind of an outside perspective, Lampard kind of came in, he did his job. Could someone have done it a little bit more comfortably? Possibly. He kind of left Everton at the end of the season in a similar position to where you were with Benitez. Just kind of fighting outside that kind of relegation zone. So really, has he just kept the momentum going that was there at the start of the season? I don't know. You got you win against Crystal Palace. As you said, you don't want to be going down to the last game of the season. I think we've all kind of, certainly the lower league team supporters have been there, done that. Got the tear-stained t-shirt either way. So I think, obviously, for you to have been going to Arsenal not needing anything is great. And luckily you didn't need anything. Obviously, you kept yourselves up. But I think... going forward, I know we'll discuss this in the pre-season episode in a couple of weeks' time, But going forward, there's a lot of changes needed. I've just been looking there. Richarlison, apparently there's some kind of player swap deal on the cards with Chelsea. Don't know who for. Everton have valued him at 70 million. And is he a bit of a diamond in the rough? Is he as good as what people think he is, or is he just a good player in a mediocre side? You've always got that kind of argument as to, is he the next big thing, or is he just kind of...
Richarlison is a player you hate to have. No, let me get this right. You want in your squad, but you hate him for anyone else. Because Gibbs got a he will battle for 90 minutes. Yeah, he might dive a little bit. Shut up, Jamie Carragher. But he will give 110%. Him and Jordan Pickford pretty much kept us up. Pickford, I would say more, with saves. But Richarlison scored some pretty important goals in the Chelsea game. Just bring a smile straight away.
B-Tech Luis Suarez.
Yeah, bit of that going on. But he's a modern player. It's not as if every club hasn't got a player of that calibre. Or not calibre, a player of that type is what I should say. Where he wants to win and he's ambitious. And if he were to go in this summer, I do not blame him, as long as it's to the right club and not Spurs. Which was a very weird link the other day to see that one come up. I would see him going abroad if it were anyone. True, and Conte's there, so it would be a strange signing from Everton's point of view, I think, to sell him, albeit not to a rival, but to another club in the Premier League. I could see him going abroad. I think if I were Ancelotti, I'd maybe look at him from Madrid. Is that a step too far? I don't know. But someone of that calibre, maybe he'd do well in the Spanish league.
Just on your point though, Deck, about when Lampard came in and sort of he took us over in 16th and finished in 16th. I think we have to look at the metrics behind that though, and the minutiae and the detail, and basically inside the black box, getting all the business speak out there now. In that, Rashford won, I think, 1 in 14 games. And yeah, he'd started like August, September in some kind of fixtures you'd normally not expect Everton to win, because you never expect any team to win a game particularly, but the games that we should have been winning. But we hadn't won an away game since Brighton at the start of the season, and not that we won many, we think we won away at Leicester, that was it, but the turnaround in terms of, we were on a downward trajectory, we were hurtling like a meteorite towards the Championship, and I don't use that word lightly. We were absolutely nosediving head first below. We'd have ended up below Watford, I maintain, if we'd have carried on with Rafa. Maybe not Norwich, but who knows. But we'd have ended up not just 18th, but 19th, at least under Rafa, I think. Because he well and truly, to say he'd lost the dressing room implies that he had it. I don't think he ever had the dressing room. And, you can't lose something you never had. And the whole Luka Dean thing, the Anwar El Ghazi nonsense with Keir Jarabchin, then sacking Rafa after all that in January was a complete nightmare. And Lampard came in and steadied the ship. And yes, it took time, because it was a very, very volatile place to be, Everton Football Club, this season. And Lampard, okay, he's navigated some choppy seas. It's still far from calm and plain sailing going into the new season, which we can discuss next month, of course. But he did what was asked of him, which was initially keep us up, keep us in this league, and then you can build. And there is going to be money there, but almost, I hope there's not too much money there, which I know sounds strange, but I hope we're given a remit whereby, right, you've only got this much. Use it wisely, be selective, and be careful how you spend your budget. Because, as we know, Everton with a major budget usually spunk against the wall. So that's the reason we're in this mess in the first place with FFP. So I hope actually we've got a restricted budget to spend on, and recruit wiser, not wider.
I think it's more, is it the season we needed as Everton fans? I'm going to say need as a weird way to put it. But if you look at the likes of Leicester, for example, I'm not saying they're going to win the league next season. Let's not talk complete nonsense. But they flirted with relegation. They're pretty close to it. And I think it bound them all together to a certain point of okay, well, this is serious now. We're not performing the level that we should be. Put it that way. And I think a lot of players come up. I've said that at the end of the season, and it's very easy to send a tweet and Instagram post, etc. Or if you're Calvert Lewin, go and pose in Vogue. I don't know, whatever he does. But also, he spoke very good. I laugh, I make jokes about it, but actually, he spoke about mental health, which I appreciate from a male point of view. I think we all appreciate that, how he came out and said that it's very easy to think of footballers as just machines to go out and play a game, once, twice a week. And he said about the impact that it had and the injuries, etc. And that didn't help our season, but I think it could either be a turning point where you realise that this is as bad as it needs to get, as it ever can get, and you build from there, and hopefully we don't then go into the downward spiral, like, for example, Leeds done over the years, or those teams that have been Premier League mainstays who did get relegated, and we're sat here in 12 months' time, not in Europe, not fighting for anything in particular, but just steadier and at least with a goal, and you can see what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve going forward. Because that's been the issue. It's been such a mess for 5-6 years. This doesn't come as a shock to most Everton fans. They've seen this coming for bloody miles off, and it gives us a chance with a lot of players going. The obvious ones that have been announced in the past week, that's Fabian Delph, who would have been on big money. The obvious name redacted has gone as well. It does give us a bit of leeway, and you hope that Lampard can bring in some young, hungry players, because that's kind of what we need. We just need some younger players who give a shit. Because that's been the issue. The players, they don't give a shit. Go on, Doug.
Yeah, no, I think it's just refreshing to hear from kind of a Premiership fan's perspective there, that it's not going to be, and again, we don't want to go too much into next season, obviously, and spoil another podcast, but I think it's refreshing to hear that there's not this expectation that it's just going to be, money will fix all, because money doesn't fix all. Down at our kind of levels, and as far even as League One, teams can fluctuate between, season relegation and season the playoffs within, a season or less than a season, because the margins at our level are so much smaller, and it can be that difference of having one or two players. The Premiership is such a complex beast. Every single team, it doesn't matter who you're playing week in, week out, everything is organised down to, who does the left shoelace and the right shoelace first. Every single little element that can affect the game is kind of well rehearsed and well driven. And I think, as you're saying there, in terms of, Jimmy, the budget, that money doesn't fix all. I know, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know that Everton obviously do need to be quite careful with their money anyway. I think that's been fairly well publicised, over the last couple of months, that they don't want to then get themselves into some kind of financial fair play problem, or where they overspend and get nothing back. I think, as you're saying, if they can steady the ship next year and kind of secure that mid-table, possibly push top, bottom half of top, bottom end, of top 10, that will be a fantastic season for Everton, for Lampard, and obviously the players involved. If there's a couple of, and I think as football fans as well, if you can kind of accept that at the start of a season and know that you're going to have some really good highs, steal a result away at City, or win one of the derbies, or that kind of thing, and just have kind of the small steps for now, or as you had this year, really had a fairly decent cup run, as to whether you could secure that kind of mid-table but safe,
What I will say, and this is very, very strange, it's weird to have something at the end of the season that you're actually playing for. I've not had that in a while. I'm not saying I want it again. I'm not saying I want to be sat here next April going, oh shit, we're going to get relegated. But it made the end of the season a bit more interesting. That much I will say, with everything else going on. But yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I agree 100%. There's changes that have already been made. I will say this: a lot of credit has got to go to those fans who go on week out. It's very easy for us to sit here. I mean, Deck, obviously, you're a season ticket holder at Tranmere, but me and Jim, we went to 2 games this season. Not that it was particularly great to go to any game, but those fans at Goodison dragged that team over the line in some of those games. Chelsea at home springs to mind. Man United springs to mind. The Palace game in particular, that really did, and I give them full credit for everything they did. I think it was coming up the fan group they call Hans Tours, I think it is, who organise a lot of the outside the ground, the parades and the smoke bombs, and go and see them before they went to Leicester, that kind of stuff. And it's fair play if you to really get behind that team, and it definitely showed for a team that didn't give us much back up until, let's be honest, end of March, early April. That was absolutely fair play to those fans who do go in, week out. and they deserve more. They deserve a lot more, and I hope this season, or next season I should say, they've got something to shout about. A cup run would be great. I think a cup run would be ideal for us, just to get rid of that thing on our back of what we're on 26 years now.
27.
27 years even, I should say. It can all be 27 years. Get that monkey off our back, and at least then we can go forward. And it gets rid of like the elephants in the room, and you go, okay, well we can relax a bit now. That bit we focus on, but that's obviously a lot easier said than done with the likes of City and Liverpool already strengthened for next season. But we'll cover that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think really to summarise, unless anyone's going to say, to be perfectly honest with Everton, is yes, one, the fans really, the change of culture of the supporters was class, and that's the only positive I can really take from the back end of this season. Farhad Moshiri's come out with his message to the fans, and he's said a lot of the right things. Whether he's still here at the beginning of next season is a different conversation to be had. Maybe next month, and speaking of next month, and no, we're not supposed to be previewing next season yet. But there's nothing about the season after. So I reckon Everton Football Club 2024 Europa Conference League winners. You heard it here first, and last.
Up the toffees.
Indeed. And speaking of trophy droughts, we're going to do what Rugby League does best and head along the M62. Sorry, Rugby League fans. To Rochdale, of course, the only club in England, Football League, that's got a longer trophy drought than Everton, Greg. That wasn't end of this season, unless finishing bottom half of League 2 gets you a trophy for some reason.
Right, hang on. I'm going to interject. On this point about trophy droughts, I looked at that list. They've been a little bit... Can you really count a playoff trophy as a trophy?
Dak, you might want to come in on this one.
Are we in that crowd? No, please. I would personally say no. Because right, I tell you what, I'll make my point, and Dak, you feel free to tell me I'm being a moron. Feel free, but yeah, it's not really a trophy, is it? I get the fact you won a final, but you finished like 6th, and you can still go. It's clutching at straws a little bit. Am I being?
It's not so much the trophy; it's the promotion that goes with it. It's the day out at Wembley.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not. I've got no issue. That's what I mean.
It's not a made trophy in the respective league, FA Cup, League Cup, whatever. But for football clubs below the Premier League, below the Championship, it's one of the few chances they're going to get outside of the Johnson's Papa Pizza, Dr. Martin's Pepper Cup, whatever it's called. I think I've name dropped so many sponsors there. We're definitely going to get sued. It's the one real chance they're going to get other than winning the league, which only one team can win each division each season. It is a trophy. Matt, you haven't experienced sitting on a stairwell in China celebrating winning the 5th division playoffs with a bunch of Chinese people around you having no clue what's going on while you're running around with a Sammy Arabia shirt going up at midnight. You cannot tell me that is not winning a trophy.
I'm not saying
you just said it's not winning a
You haven't won a trophy. You haven't won a trophy. You've won promotion. The trophy is just a tag on that you get with it. I'm happy to be told otherwise, but yeah, I think that's clutching at straws a little bit. If it were me. Go on, Deck. Please tell me I'm making a knob.
Here's a bit of food for thought. Look at the playoffs as a mini cup tournament.
Right, to me, that's what I'm likening it to. If I'm honest.
No. The playoffs are far more prestigious than the friggin' Aldi Cup in the pre-season.
Okay. I'll agree to disagree on that one. But to me, there's at least an hour-long podcast of me going, nah, guys, you're all chatting shite. It's not a trophy. And you three having to go at me.
He hates the
No, I don't.
League.
No. Don't put words in my mouth.
He wants nothing to do with lower league football. He's an elitist. He's a Tory.
You dare. It is like getting a trophy for finishing in the top 4.
Unsubscribe, guys.
It is 100%. I put it in the same bracket. I put it in the same bracket as the top 4 getting in the Premier League. Sorry, the Champions League and the Premier League. It's bollocks. You cannot finish 4th in your league and be classified as a Champions League.
You don't want a trophy finishing 4th?
That's tosh. I'm not saying you do win a trophy finish up, but I put it in the same sort of situation of celebrating something when you haven't
we
won
celebrated
it.
finishing 16th.
You can't win your league. Not the point. First of all, we didn't celebrate. The people, that was more relief. That wasn't celebration.
Patrick Vieira
That
got
was sheer
abused because we
panic.
finished 16th.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, that was more funny because you're abusing Patrick Vieira of all the people you could pick on. Pick on Roy Keane at the same time as well. Really get your head kicked in. I'll agree to disagree. All right, I'll let you have it.
If we have any Nottingham Forest fans, by the way, or indeed, let's get those Sunderland fans back on and try telling them. Any Grimsby fans?
I met two Nottingham Forest fans. In Rob's. I didn't say congrats for your trophy. I didn't say congrats for your trophy. I said well done getting up. I'd have preferred you to go up to Huddersfield. Nothing against Huddersfield. Just quite like to see Forest back in the Premier League.
Yeah, I agree. We'll talk about that in a bit, I'm sure. But
didn't say enjoy your
so
trophy.
at the end of the game, Matt, what did the Forest players go and do?
Hug their families.
Before that,
I don't know.
They walked up a load of steps, and what did they? Is it like that FIFA meme? Just lift up that fresh air.
I'll back down before I cause internal fractions.
What about just the medal and not the trophy?
Isn't that a runner-up?
Is that anything? Then? Could you do that instead?
Yes.
Isn't that a runner-up?
Is that again, Jim? I suppose it isn't it really?
Yeah.
How about instead of having a Champions Trophy, a promotion trophy and a playoff trophy, that everyone lifts the same trophy because they've all achieved the same thing?
In the true spirit of school sports day, why doesn't every player get a medal? Regardless of where they finish. Because to me, a professional footballer, everyone's a fucking winner. You're part of the 0.1%.
I can see what Matt's saying. I get it now, because everyone sort of frowns upon the Community Shield as counting as something.
Exactly. Thank you, Greg. That was what I was trying to make this point this entire time.
Okay, Matt. What's Everton's last trophy then?
It's the FA Cup. Don't even try and catch me out. I know it's Community Shield back in
Charity
96.
Shield?
Not the point.
It's the Charity Shield. It
Not
is.
the point. Not the point. It's not. In my head, it's the FA Cup.
Okay, well, then we go right down the list of honours then, don't we? Right, anyway, regardless, trophy dads, I think there's no doubt, Greg, that besides the 1912 Lancashire Senior Cup, which I don't think has been going for the last 60-odd years, that Rochdale are in the, I want to say near the end of a trophy drought, but we'll say in the middle at the moment. Let's hope not smack bang in the middle. We'll finally get onto your season. Sorry about that. Some obtuse fucker decided the playoffs win a trophy. So, we'll move on swiftly to that.
I made my point and I stick with it.
Anyway, Greg, Rochdale, discuss. Go.
Okay, so finished 18th and somehow, I think, 15 points clear, safe. And I remember maybe not the last pod or the pod before that, I was like, I don't know if we're going to stay up, I don't know if we're going to do that. But I think when you're looking from the outside, sometimes you see it a bit clearer. Like Jimmy and Deck and Matt were all like, oh no, I think you'll be fine. But it's not always the case when you're experiencing that as a fan. It's a bit like somebody saying to Everton, oh, you'll be fine, you're Everton. It wasn't always going to be that straightforward, and it was never going to be a given. You always see it from a different perspective, don't you? So I was convinced that, we're still in a relegation battle, we're still in there, we're still going to be down there. But obviously, Scunthorpe had, I don't know what they were a bit of a mess, weren't they, all over the place, Scunthorpe, but you're always going to be Oldham, and I can't remember who else it was it Stevenage? Not Stevenage. Somebody else were down there, and it were between 3 and then the points get narrow and the games get, we're 5 points off, we're 10 points off, we're fine, and then it becomes sort of more of a, you can relax a little bit. But yeah, it wasn't particularly an enjoying season. It was just very, don't know. I mean, obviously I'm in the Joe Bunny support group WhatsApp chat. And we were just saying that the past 2-3 seasons there's just been no urgency, and it always gets to like the end of the season where we've played with some urgency. It's almost as if we get to like March and go, oh, hey up lads, hang on, we need to get something here. But it shouldn't be that way really. It shouldn't have to be so close to the end of the season that we have to start playing football, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, they didn't go to that many games this year with that. There were no. I lost a bit of enthusiasm for it a little bit. I was watching it on iFollow and things like that, and like my dad's not particularly gone to a few. I think he'd only gone to 2 games all season. My dad, he's just sort of fed up with it. I went to the house yesterday and he's like, don't really. I started talking about season tickets. He's like, No, I don't know. Can't really connect with any of the players, and we didn't play very well. But I think that's also to do with COVID. So COVID, obviously nobody's been to games and things like that, the COVID season. And then afterwards, if you're not playing particularly well, you're still in that sort of, not rhythm, but routine of not going. So there's nothing to go for sometimes. But if we were battering people teams 3-0 and 4-0, probably would have gone. But I think the COVID season didn't help in terms of nobody turning up, and then you get into your habits, don't you? So yeah, I mean, we're safe, which is fine. I didn't particularly think the quality of League Two was that great.
Just going back to you said about the COVID season and the effect that probably had on attendances. Obviously, not last season, as in the season just gone. Do you think also the fact you were relegated during COVID, obviously as well, that double whammy of fans weren't allowed in the stadium for a year and a half or whatever it was, you got relegated, then fans were allowed back in, but it's almost like you've been away, but we're now a division below, the standard's worse. Do you think that's maybe been a deterrent for a lot of people as well, wondering, well, money's tight, I'm going to spend it elsewhere, or I'm going to save it, or I'm going to, utilise it, especially with the way, not to get too political, but the way the price of everything's going up at the moment, petrol and utilities and all that, bills and whatnot. Do you think people maybe thought, it's not worth it going and watch some 4th Division cloggers?
I think so, yeah. We're only a small fan base. We only get like 3,200 a week, a home game. And I think when you've got Man City down the road, but we've spoke about it on previous episodes, where you can get to a game for 20 quid, and that's world-class football. A few people are going watching City or whoever, and different, or doing other options, or staying in and watching a film, or doing video games. There's other options now. Whereas, like years ago, like my dad ran about it, it's like in the 70s, there weren't a lot of other options to do. It's like cricket, football, rugby, and that were it really. But now we've got a bit more variety, or staying in and things like that. So I think that's one thing, and habits, obviously, continuing from COVID and things like that. But when I were going to the home games, there were a few fans that weren't there that used to be. So I was thinking, where's that lad that used to sit there, and then where's the other lad? And it's just, I mean, it's not going to be for every team, but I saw that coming back after a year and a half, like what you said, Jim, after that COVID season and things like that people weren't there, and then there were faces that you don't recognise and things like that. So there is a sort of, you sort of lose the, not desire, but you sort of, people aren't there that you used to be, and you're not playing very well, and then you're getting thumped, and then you haven't won in 8 games and things like that. So there's no real, people just knock it on the head, some of them. I mean, I only went to a few home games, admittedly, but I went to a few away games. But yeah, it was just a bit of a flat season, I think you could say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Greg. I think just going back to what you were saying, in terms of the quality across League Two as well, I'd absolutely agree. I think going back to, I don't know whether it was the last podcast that went out or the one before, and we made our predictions in terms of end of season. And I said on there that Forest Green wouldn't run away with it, and that Exeter had really done. That went down to the wire. And I think, certainly towards the back end of the season, Forest Green were starting to show a few cracks in the armour. They were untouchable for, a good 3 quarters of the season, but they started to stumble. Obviously, Exeter came good towards the back end, but they were hit and miss all the way through the season. Really, Port Vale, I think again were one of the teams that I said would probably be up and around there. I think they were about 8th or 9th, I think, when we spoke. But as a whole, I think the standard of football, as you were saying, was quite low. And then you look at it as where teams are a little bit conservative in terms of their spending this season. The first season having fans back in properly. Post-COVID season, was it just very much a thing for a lot of teams to just survive for the season and just remain in League Two? If you get a couple of players playing well and you get a bit of a run together, see where it takes you. But apart from that, just be happy to be where we are for another year and then push on. I think just in terms of, I know we're obviously still on Rochdale, but in terms of the recruitment and stuff like that I've seen with ourselves and some other teams, it looks to be, there's not mega money being spent, but recruitment seems to be a little bit more strategic as well looking forward. I think last year was a lot of kind of old and familiar faces coming back to different teams and kind of sticking with what people knew would work, really. And as you say, I think the standard, because of that, was generally quite poor. It was just a kind of, well, we'll turn up.
Is this why from a personal point of view, you're all quite glad that Wrexham didn't get promoted. But from a...
No, we'll touch on that in the second part of the pod. Let's not encroach, boys. But yes, that is brilliant.
Hang on. But from a football point of view, I mean, again, I know we're looking forward to next season, but if they had come up with the money they've got behind them, would that have caused a lot of other teams to have to kind of show their hand and try and follow suit, if that makes sense? To try and
we're
not
forgetting
match them.
slightly one that the Football League, we'll get onto this more later, the Football League is subject to FFP rulings that the National League aren't. And Stockport are not exactly sure of a few bob. So, I see what you're saying though, but obviously we'll get onto that a bit later on, definitely. But just on League 2 a bit more from both your perspectives, really. You found the quality of the league quite poor, and I have to say from what I've seen as well, there weren't many sides that came to Prenton Park, or that when I was there that I thought really impressed me. I do think though that Port Vale were one of them. I have to say that I thought were quite solid. But are there any teams in particular that you've seen either obviously in person or away games or iFollow, whatever it may be, whether it be a side that's got up, a side that hasn't, that actually has shown, wow, they're actually a really good side for this level this season? Anyone from either, because you might have different perspectives depending on the games you've seen.
I think just from games that not necessarily really involving us, just games in general. Bristol Rovers, I have to say, they played some very free-flowing attacking football, and again, if the standard across the division was slightly different, would they have been as successful as they were? Probably not. They kind of approached pretty much every game with let's go and outstore the opposition, which arguably is the way to go. So Bristol for me were quite a solid side. I think you touched there on Port Vale. They kind of had that never say die attitude, scored a lot of late and important goals, and I think we've all been involved in enough seasons now whereby you get to that last, say, 7 or 8 games and the same teams are popping up, 80, 90 minute equaliser, 91st minute winner, and so on. And Port Vale were one of those sides quite consistently towards the end of the season. They were just starting to tick, really. They didn't hit playoffs in spectacular form. I'm just looking there. They'd won 3 and lost 2 of the 5 games leading up to the playoffs, so they weren't by any means, steamrolling sides, but I think they always had that little bit of firepower behind them. So for me, they were probably the standout too.
I think Mansfield are one team that were always picking up the points. And you are looking week in, week out, thinking, how are we doing? How are Tranmere doing? How are Salford or whoever? And Mansfield are always getting the 3 points in the bag, draw, 3 points, draw, and they were doing a good run at one point. I know it sort of got a little bit bobbly at the end. I think it was like win, lose, draw, or something around that. But I always thought they were looking promising at one point. I was a bit surprised that Port Vale beat them. I know we were saying that Port Vale actually played well or had a good season, but I always thought, I had him in my head, I was just thinking, no, I think Mansfield will be alright. I was a bit surprised that they got beat. Just picking on the top teams, you might have seen the Bristol result. Was it the last game of the season? Was it 7-0? Do you think that's a little bit...
Keith Hill over and out.
I know, but I don't know. I thought that was a bit peculiar that, yes, winning 3-0, but 7 precisely seems a bit...
Yeah, it in the moment it didn't seem that at all. In the moment it was... I was sat here watching, obviously, the last kind of round of fixtures of the season and flicking between and obviously seeing their goals coming in on Sky Sports and you're thinking, surely not. And I don't know whether that kind of alludes to that kind of just go all out and attack. They knew exactly what they had to achieve. Scunthorpe had absolutely nothing to play for. It didn't matter to them whether they shipped 8 goals or conceded 1 or won the game. It was making no odds to them. But I think, as you're saying, in retrospect, to actually go and achieve that is either something quite outstanding, even though you're playing a very, very poor side, to go and score 7 goals against a side in your own division is something. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not suggesting any kind of match fixing or anything like that, but it is kind of quite a difficult one, isn't it, in terms of...
Quite ironic, yeah.
I think what we're forgetting, though, is that Bristol Rovers' remit at the start of the game, wasn't to win by 7 goals. They had to better Northampton's result by 5 goals or more. Now, Northampton were actually 3-1 up at Barrow when Bristol Rovers' 7th goal went in. Now, the bit that, for me, is all clear, all fine. The bit that sort of, and it's not Bristol Rovers, the team's fault. My issue I have with that is that then, once the 7th goal went in, what did the Bristol Rovers fan do? Do what every supporter group's done this season, it seems, and invade the pitch. That then causes a 15-20 minute delay in the Bristol Rovers game. Meanwhile, the Barrow-Northampton game finishes. Therefore, there's 15-20 minutes left when the game restarts, or whatever it was. Probably actually only about 5 minutes left, I think, when the game restarts for Bristol Rovers. Knowing full well Northampton have won 3-1 at Barrow. That's it. And they then know, as long as they don't concede, that's it, done. They know what they need to do then. The games weren't played in parallel with each other because there was a delay in the last 5-10 minutes of the Bristol Rovers fixture. Up until then, it was a case of just go out and outscore the worst team in the division who's playing largely their youth team because they're going down and their first team's been crap anyway. That's why Keith Hill picked the players he did. They'd actually played their youth team the last few days because a lot of the senior players were out of contract or whatever, or were going out of contract. And I think the big issue again has to be that pitch invasion, that problem there, then perpetuate the fact that then Bristol Rovers knew, look lads, all we have to do now is we don't need to score, don't need to concede, hold on to a 7-0 victory, and we're up. Because the Northampton game had finished. So I think that was slightly wrong, but then there's not a lot that could be done with that from either Bristol Rovers, the club, or Northampton's perspective. That's on the supporters, I'd argue. But I don't think that's match fixing. I think that's just...
They're sort of creating their own buffering time there, aren't they, in terms of pitch invasion and things like that. They've created a bit of a buffering time, I would say.
Not forgetting as well that if Barrow hadn't got that goal back, Northampton would have gone up. Because then Northampton would have won by 3 clear goals, and they'd have gone up by 1 goal. Anyway, on to the League 2 still. We've spoken a bit about Rochdale. Deck, what would you like to add regarding Tranmere? I mean, from my perspective, and yours as well, started meh, then it was like, ooh, might go up here. Then we got the second, and I thought, ooh, might even win the league. And then, well, I'll let you finish this tale of woe.
Yeah, you left me with the exciting part of the story there, didn't you, Jimmy? Yeah. It all went to pot, really. I think I alluded to it slightly earlier on in the podcast that I think we could kind of see where it was going. Realistically, did we recruit properly at the start of the season? Probably not. I think Rovers, as much as they would deny it, I think they were quite conservative in terms of the players that they brought in. Not necessarily knocking the calibre, but in terms of a lot of players who you would argue were kind of past their best, maybe. A few panic buys or panic loans or signings in January. I have to say that the Hemming signing from Burton, in all honesty, he got a lot of unnecessary stick from some of our supporters, and I really don't understand why. He looks like a lazy striker, but he's not a lazy striker. I think he's a very intelligent attacking player myself. I think off the top of my head, he got something like 8 goals and 6 assists, or so, he was directly involved in over 20 goals, or some kind of mad stat. And actually, when you think of that in a side who were not scoring goals, second half of the season, that's a fairly good return. But just kind of looking there towards our results towards the end of the season, what was so infuriating for me, take away the fact obviously that we missed out on the playoffs the last game of the season, and yet we could have, should have, and would have possibly have got automatic promotion. We didn't, and that's the matter of fact, we weren't good enough. But how on earth did we go 10 games away from home without a win? And not just 10 games away from home without a win and playing well, we were awful, to then go and get an away win last game of the season to Leyton Orient. I really don't... I'm not saying for any second that the players didn't give 100% effort. Quite clearly they did. But why did it take until that last game of the season for a change in tactic or a change of approach? They knew that they had to go there and get a result. But 3 or 4 weeks earlier on, they knew that they had to go and get a result to secure automatic, and they didn't. It was almost like, oh, well, we've got the safety net there of the playoffs, we won't possibly slip out of them. And it kind of bit them on the arse a little, well, quite a bit actually. So all in all, ups and downs, some very exciting moments of the season, some real highlights. The Mansfield game and the Swindon results will kind of live, I say long in the memory, they'll be forgotten by the start of next season, but there were a few big games there at Prenton Park. But I think as a whole, a learning curve, yes. Have we learnt from our lessons? Who knows? As I say, the recruitment looking into next season so far looks quite strong. They seem to have replaced a lot of has-beens or older players for much younger players who, you know, potentially could earn us a couple of quid in the future. And I think that's the way that we need to go now. Yeah, that's all I've got to say, really.
Have they released Peter Clark? Is he gone now? Is that?
Yeah, Clark was offered, from what I believe, he was offered a kind of player coach role. I think he was basically told that you'll be involved in the squad, but you won't necessarily be first choice. And he decided that he wanted to go somewhere and get more game time, which, you know, you've got to respect. If he feels that he's up for another full season as first choice centre back, absolutely fine. He had a fantastic season for us from a Walsall fan point of view, signing a 41-year-old centre back or 40-year-old centre back as your first choice from the start of the season. I'm not sure I'd be overly happy with that. Yeah, he's proven and he's shown that he can do it, but there were definitely cracks starting to show there in the latter months of the season.
I'm going to say he had a great first half of the season from what I remember, probably bleeding into the second half slightly, but I remember you saying that he was playing quite a lot of games, a lot of minutes anyway.
Yeah, I think he was one of the only players last season in the whole league to not miss a minute of league football. I'm pretty sure he played all the way through, but I've just realised what I've said there. No disrespect to Peter Clark at all. He was superb serving to our club and a lot of other clubs as well. I do just kind of feel that potentially a role like we were suggesting could have been a little bit better suited maybe towards him. But, I wish him well at Walsall. I hope he does have a solid season. I just kind of think that Walsall maybe have fallen down the trap that we did last season of signing players who, will come in and do a job.
It's interesting that you talk about that in terms of players of that age bracket. I know Salford City have released quite a few players, and they've released Ian Henderson, who's like one of the best players we've ever had. I think he's two goals off Rochdale's all-time list, goal scorer list, and all the Dale fans are like, oh, get him, sign him. But at what point do you draw the line, Deck? In terms of offering them more than what you would, and you can't, like you were saying before about you can't really sell them on because they're not. You can't. What you're going to get out of it at the end of it is a difficult sort of discussion that I guess with the managers and things like that. Like, where do you draw the line with the players of a certain age? I guess. Yeah,
I think a similar conversation that I would assume probably happened with Jay Spearing. So I think Jay was around the 35 mark-ish, 35, 36. So yeah, he probably had another 1 or 2 seasons in that position, certainly at our level or possibly at the conference level. I think he's gone to pursue some kind of media career and coaching career with Liverpool, which, to be fair to him, is perfect. He's probably making more money than he was playing. He's took that pressure away from him and his family. But he's, in my eyes, Clark would have been the same if Clark had turned around and retired. They've gone out on a high. Obviously, the only older player now that we've retained and signed him for next season is Joe Murphy, the keeper, who is 40 or 41. I think he's 40. And to be quite honest, I think a goalkeeper can, if they look after themselves, they can play into the early 40s without a problem. It's not a position where your knees are going to go from running and whatnot. If your reactions are still there, there's no reason why you can't play on. And he was, for me, was one of our stronger and more reliable or consistent players, certainly the second half of the season. So I think it's important every side has that kind of core of experienced players. But I think maybe last season or the season just gone, maybe slightly imbalanced and had a few too many older players. So hopefully this season will be slightly different.
Okay, well, has anyone got anything else to say regarding our particular close in the season that's been, or
just a quick one? I'll blitz through these, but Dale have already signed a few players. We've signed Ethan Landell from Shrewsbury, who we used to have a few years ago as a centre back. I think we got him on a free, but he was quite a solid player when we had him first time round. But you never know, do you? When it's the second time round, you don't. When you get a player on loan and you think, oh, he's good, we'll sign him permanently. Sometimes it doesn't always follow through, does it, with form and how they used to play, or are they playing for a contract and as soon as they get a contract they dip off a little bit? So there's things like that, isn't there, sometimes? But yeah, we've just signed him. Stephen Dooley has left Rochdale to go to Harrogate, which I'm quite happy about because I didn't rate him in the slightest.
Haven't you lost, is it you and one of them, Corey O'Keefe? One or t'other?
Oh, that was Corey O'Keefe. Yes. We had Danny, second cousin Danny, on January maybe, and he was talking about that he was talking about Corey O'Keefe, that we signed him in January, and we had to like move rocks and mountains to sign him, and he didn't really play that well, but he did make 10 assists throughout the season, so that is quite a good return somewhere, one way or another. But he's gone now, so it is what it is. Forest Green, yeah, I mean, you're not going to turn that down, are you, really, at League One? So
was going to say, I hope he doesn't miss his steak too much on his chicken. But in all fairness, we can get on to Forest Green at a later point. But I think that wraps up part 1, or episode 23 for now, reviewing Everton, Tranmere and Rochdale's fortunes of the 2021-22 season. I want to thank you all, gents, for joining us today. Again, if you have any questions, please get in touch with us at Men in Blue Podcast on a variety of social media platforms. And until next time, when we do a full season review of the story that was, then we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.
bye everyone.
See ya.
Sports Social Podcast Network.